And Politico recently reported that this year there is a record number of black Republicans running in 2022 primaries. Freshman Republican from Florida, Byron Donalds, may have paved the way. He joins us. Nice to talk to you, sir.
It's good to be with you.
Before I talk to you about African American in the House of Representatives, I want to ask you about the Florida purchase there's so many Chinese buying homes in Florida. What's your thought about that?
Well, really, it's two things. Number one, obviously, people want to be in the great state of Florida for many, many reasons. I think my concern with the amount of purchases from Chinese nationals is not so much them coming to Florida, but the amount of economic power that's leaving the United States and going over to China. If you look at the president's environmental policies, if you look at his desire to have a massive amount of electric cars in the United States, those batteries come from China. China is dominating the globe and procuring minerals, and we're giving them that money as opposed to doing that stuff here in the United States, increasing our GDP, increasing the wealth of our citizens. That's the thing that causes me more concern.
All right. Let me turn now to the House of Representatives. There are only 2 African-American Republicans in the House. I was actually surprised. I should have known that ahead of time, but I didn't know that until today. Why are there so few African-American Republicans?
Well, I think it's a couple of things. I think for a long time, a lot of people in the black community didn't really feel comfortable running as Republicans. What we're seeing in this election cycle is the most amount of black candidates ever running for Congress, ever. We have candidates all over the country. Our numbers are going to grow in the next Congress. You have a good friend of mine, Wesley Hunt, down in Texas. He's almost assured to win. John James is running in Michigan again. He looks like he's going to join us in the House. You have Jennifer Ruth Green in Indiana. She looks like she's going to join us as well. But our party is really becoming the party of all Americans. It always has been. But I think what we've seen in the years where policy matters, where actual outcomes do matter, and where the Democrats' radical agenda just has failed so many Americans, more black people are saying, you know what, it's time to give Republicans a chance because the Democrats have failed us.
Well, how the Democrats failed you, and what do the Republicans offer you?
Well, a number of things. The first is just the gaslighting that happens in politics every year. Look at the way they run their campaigns. Everything is either they're taking away voting rights, or they're taking away now abortion rights, or they're trying to take us back. And Joe Biden even said himself, they want you to go back and live in chains. That's outrageous. Nobody in the Republican Party is doing that. Well, from the Republican side, what we stand for is we want money to follow the children in education. We want parents to be empowered so they can make the right decisions for their children. Number 2, we want an economy that grows, where capital freely flows so people can actually get loans, they can grow their small businesses, they can accomplish the American dream. Number 3, we want a low tax environment. You can't grow an economy with high taxes and high regulation. It doesn't matter if you're white, black, Hispanic, you will struggle in that kind of an economy. So if you're really trying to build your net worth as a black American or as American in general, you need Republican policies in order to create that wealth that you can then pass on to the next generation.
Well, if that is such a better idea for African Americans, how come so many African Americans aren't, going in? I mean, obviously I see that it's growing, but I mean, the numbers are staggeringly in favor of voting Democrat than Republican.
Well, look, on that front, I'm actually critical of the party. I think that for a long time, the Republican Party has not actually taken its message to the black community and to people who are outside of the Republican sphere. That for a while in electoral politics, it was okay to just go get Republican votes. You didn't need the others to win. But that dynamic obviously has changed over the last 10 years. The second thing is, and this is actually one of the good things I would say out of the 24-hour news cycle, out of so much social media, people can actually see the implications of policy in a much more visceral way today than they might have done in previous years, just picking up the New York Times and watching 3 or 4 news channels. And I think that dynamic and that depth of information is giving people an ability to really judge for themselves which policies work for them.
Is it fair to say, I mean, maybe from what you say, that the Republican has a bigger tent than Democrats right now, that the Republicans are reaching out more to African Americans, and maybe Democrats are just have an expectation?
Well, I think right now the Democrats just take advantage of black votes. They take them for granted. They're not coming up here with policies that are addressing the plight of building wealth for people on the lower end of the socioeconomic spectrum. Look at what they're talking about. We're talking about Roe v. Wade. We were talking about same-sex marriage when there's nobody even talking about same-sex marriage on the Republican side of the aisle. They're so focused on this Green New Deal, which is moving more wealth offshore from the United States. It's not actually creating a strong energy base here at home. They have a reckless southern border policy where fentanyl is coming across the border and it's killing people, white, black, and Hispanic, in every community in the United States. They don't want to have police in our streets. They want it just to be open season. Those policies don't work for people who are struggling in America, in urban corridors, trying to make the American dream, trying to take that leap. The Republican Party is bringing those policies, and I would say, really for the first time since the 60s, Republicans are actually courting those voters.
Congressman, we'll be watching to see what happens in November if your party does take the House. I'm sure that we'll be seeing a lot more of you come January. Right?
Of course.
Anyway, I hope you come back, sir.
Anytime.